Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Good. There we go. Let's try that one more time. Good morning. How are we doing today? Excellent. My name is Tony Penny. I'm the director of the Walter and Lenore Annenberg Presidential Learning Center here at the Foundation, and I'm so excited that each and every one of you came to join us today for the Simi Valley Youth Town Hall. I'm going to be very brief because, as you can probably tell by looking at me, I am not youthful. And today is all about the youth. I just wanted to get up here and say a very quick thank you to the Simi Valley Youth Council for all the hard work they've done in putting this together, and to Kristen Tignack, who's worked very closely with us to put this together. And I also wanted to briefly recognize our Chief Administrative Officer, Joanne Drake from the Foundation, who's here today. Thank you for joining us. And I said I'd be brief, and I meant it. I'm now going to turn it over to someone who is much more articulate and much more handsome than myself, and that is Mr. Nicholas Mintzer, our Master of Ceremonies today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Simi Valley Youth Town Hall at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. My name is Nicholas Mintzer, a junior at Santa Susana High School and a member of the Simi Valley Youth Council. To honor our men and women in uniform, please rise and welcome the members of the Youth Council who will assist me in the flag salute.
Please face the flag. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are all gathered here today to focus on the ongoing issues related to our youth population. An event such as this gives the opportunity for the youth and those concerned about youth-related matters to have direct contact with those making impactful decisions about our minors. We would like to ask the audience to take an active part in the discussion as well, using social media and text messaging. If at any point during the discussion you would like to have any questions or comments of yours answered by our panelists, you may submit your question on Twitter by using the hashtag SimiTownHall in your tweet, including your question, or by texting Simi Town Hall followed by your question to the number 22333. For today's event, we will have two of our Youth Council members moderating and proposing questions for the discussion, Chris Busco from Santa Susana High School and Kelly McManaman from Simi Valley High School. We have been honored with the privilege of having four astounding speakers who represent different offices from around the state and have volunteered their time to speak with us today. First, we have Deborah Salgado, the Director of Secondary Education for the Simi Valley Unified School District. Earlier this year, Mrs. Salgado attended an event created by the Youth Council called the Simi Valley Youth Summit, a leadership conference for our high school students, along with our next panelist, and proposed many valuable ideas on ways to resolve numerous youth-related concerns. Our second panelist is Mayor Bob Huber of the city of Simi Valley. I've never seen a man who was more involved in his community. Whether it is for the Youth Job Fair and events such as this, Mayor Huber finds a way to be present and involved. Our third panelist is Superintendent Stanley Mantooth of the Ventura County Office of Education. Mr. Mantooth has developed and improved many of our student service programs for the county, such as special education, court and community schools, the Career Education Center, or CEC, charter schools, migrant education, and the homeless and foster youth programs. Our final panelist is Assemblyman Scott Wilk, representing the 38th District of the state of California. One of Mr. Wilk's most prominent points is how we should value our teachers more, for they are an integral part responsible for the future adults of our nation, and improve the teachers in our system to provide a better education for our students and better future for all. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Take a selfie. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris Busco, and I'm a student at Santa Susana High School and also a member of the Youth Council. So today, to start off our panel, we're going to be asking each of our panelists what do they see as the most vital and pressing issue for youth today. Ms. Salgado, would you like to interject first?
Well, I've thought a lot about that question, and I ended up on not the first thing that I thought of. Because I think when I really deeply think about that question, I think that the most pressing issue for our adolescents today is the same issue that has been the work of adolescents since time began. And that is to learn how to think outside of yourself, think about the contributions that you are making, and what kind of an adult you want to be. So I think that the most pressing issue for youth today is to define yourself. I also think that sometimes that might be a little bit harder today because it is so easy to define yourself in one way, and then as a natural progression of youth, you find out that you have other talents or other interests, and sometimes it's kind of hard to change an image that has been out there on social media and all of those things. So I think that the most pressing issue is to learn how to define yourself and to contribute to those around you and to decide the kind of person that you want to be as an adult, and also to learn how to kind of protect those precious years where you are changing very, very much and very rapidly.
Mayor Huber?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the Youth Council putting this together. Thank you for that. I also appreciate the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation hosting it, so thank you for that. The thought about this, our city is deeply involved in youth issues. The Youth Council is part of our city, and we're very, very proud of our Youth Council and all the hard work they do for the city. But being more specific and honing in on issues, there's two that I think are very important issues, primary issues to deal with right now with young people. And one is the issue of bullying. This is an issue that I think is impacting a lot of people. I had a grandfather come into me recently saying that his granddaughter, because of bullying, ended up trying to hurt herself, ended up in the hospital for 5 days. And what we did in that case is I called the police chief, and they had the school resource officer, and by the way, she was being homeschooled because of it. School resource officer met with her and assured her that he would keep an eye on her in the schools, and she's back in the regular school and what have you. Incidentally, tonight we do have a anti-bullying bullying prevention a conference or meeting at the library from 6 to 8 p.m. I would encourage all of you to attend that, and this is put on by the well, it's actually a joint effort. It's put on by the city, partnering with Senator Fran Pavley's office, District Attorney's office, the County Behavioral Health, the Community Coalition United, and it will be at the library tonight, and it's something I would encourage all of you to attend. The other issue that I think is a key issue, and I'm talking as the mayor of the city, okay, is drug abuse prevention, okay? This is a key issue. We have to be on top of it at all times. We were highlighted last year, early part of last year, on the Dr. Phil Show as the leaders in the United States of America, and that's because we stepped up as a community and formed the Heroin Prevention Task Force. And this has been very effective. It brought together 2 representatives from the city, 2 representatives from the school board, 2 representatives from the park board, 2 representatives from the faith-based community, a representative from the Not One More organization. And you've probably seen the posters around town at the bus stops. The schools has been very active on this, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I think it's one of our main questions that we're going to deal with later. But those are the 2 most pressing issues for young people as I see them today in the city.
Assemblyman Wilk?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and I want to thank the Simi Youth Council and the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library Foundation for putting this together. I think those are fine answers, but the burden that I have on my heart is I believe that my generation is going to be the first generation to hand this country and this state over to the next generation in worse shape than we inherited it. And what I see the largest challenge is just the crushing amount of debt that we're placing upon you. At the federal level, this year, their budget is going to be $3.9 trillion, but we have a debt of $17.8 trillion and climbing. I don't even know how we're going to get our hands around that. At the state level, we have similar challenges. Our budget that we just passed last June is $108 billion, largest budget that we've ever passed, yet it doesn't fund many of the challenges that we have. According to the Public Policy Institution of California, we're going to be short 1.1 million trained workers because we have not done enough to invest in higher education. Our K-12 spending per pupil, we rank 47th in the country. You have to have an infrastructure, whether it's roads, water, what have you. According to Caltrans, we're short $290 billion between now and 2020. Those are in prison. Our prisons have been taken over by the federal courts because of inadequate spending. And finally, Governor Brown talks about the wall of debt, which he pegs at about $35 billion. But what he doesn't talk about is the over $500 billion in unfunded liabilities that's going to go to public employee pensions and health care retirement. And recently, the California State Auditor conducted an audit. So she added up all of our assets, so things that we own, and then all of our liabilities, which is everything that we owe. And California's net worth is negative $127.2 billion. So that's the challenge. So how do we go about, taking care of that? Well, you can say raise taxes, but the fact of the matter is we have the highest income tax in the country, we have the highest sales tax in the country, and we have the highest gasoline excise tax in the country. And out of that $108 billion, budget, we have 38 million people in the state. Half of that revenue comes from only 150,000 people. 150,000 people produce half of the revenue that we get. So, soaking the rich is not the answer. There's a lot of things we can do. Maybe it'll come up later in the discussion. But I just want you to be aware of what's happening to you, because you, unfortunately, are going to be inheriting this debt. And you need to be engaged now, as well as getting your parents engaged, so we make the right decisions that's going to affect your future and your children's future.
Thank you. Superintendent Mantooth?
Good morning, everyone. You would think in my role as county superintendent, I see students all the time. The counterintuitive fact is that I'm usually busy cheerleading for you in other arenas, and so it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And I think one of the most pertinent things that you're already involved in is riding that tiger of social and technological change, because in a very few short years, you hopefully will be guiding that tiger. And if you read the newspaper, you realize that our technological progress and our social progress are not moving at the same pace, are they? And so you've got a lot of choices to make about how you're going to make things better in our world, whether it be in our community, our state, or bigger arenas than that. And you have all the information available to you to begin making those choices and find out where your interests lie. And I'm really happy to see that there are not only high school students here today, but middle schoolers as well. Because sometimes by the time you reach high school, the die has already been cast, either for you or by you. But how are you going to know what to prepare for? Because most of the careers you're going to participate in haven't been invented yet. That's why I like what is a new transition in our educational world in the Common Core standards. Because it's not about just learning a bunch of facts. It's learning about how to collaborate, how to communicate, how to think critically, and how to be creative. And when you learn those, when you have those tools, your future's wide open. The other thing I would encourage you to do is sometimes we get caught up so much in our own lives, we only think maybe there's one or two choices, like, should I go to the prom or not? Should I go to the library or not? There might be a half a dozen other things. So I would encourage you always to try to look outside yourselves and, as we say, go to the balcony once in a while and see your place in this world now so that you can fit into it better in the future.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next issue, which is going to be turn it over to my colleague, Kelly.
Hello. So first, I would like to thank both the panelists and you guys, the students, for being here, because without you, this isn't possible, and it's cool that you guys are expressing your interest in youth issues. So my name is Kelly McManaman. I'm currently a junior at Simi Valley High School. I'm the Sergeant at Arms for our Simi Valley Youth Council, and I'll be your moderator for today. So all our lives, we are asked, what are you going to do when you grow up? And specifically, we're asked, what steps are you going to take to get there? And the next big step for us is college. So when we think of college, we're not necessarily prepared for the fact that we're going to a little sheltered middle school or high school. We're stepping into reality, and we're going into this new place that we're not really informed about. In fact, 40% of students said that their main concern for the future was college, and 68% of the students said that their main concern for the future was how they're going to pay their student loans. This is kind of scary, considering that this is the next big step we have to take. So college can be put into 3 subcategories. There is the applying into college, how am I going to get in? There is the how am I going to pay for this, the money payments, and there is the aftermath of the college. What am I going to do after I have my degree? Will I find a job? And all these statistics are really frightening. In fact, 7 out of 10 graduate students from college graduate with college debt, and over 40 million Americans still have college debt after they went to college. And since 1999, the college debt has increased by 500%, and that's a remarkable number that we should really take into consideration. So we have these 4 amazing panelists to ask questions for college so we can be more informed. My first question goes to Mrs. Salgado. Yes. So since you direct secondary education, are there any programs that are in the high school that better prepare students for college?
Absolutely. We have college prep classes. In fact, the vast majority of our classes in the secondary system are college prep. When I started college, I came out of a little dusty high school in the middle of nowhere in a different state. And the first week of college for me was an eye-opener, because I realized that even though I was an A and B student in high school, I really hadn't learned how to learn. And I think that's the thing, that the challenging classes that students have the opportunity to take in high school help you to learn how to do. It's a skill. And it's that skill that Superintendent Mantooth was talking about that you're going to need as you inherit these jobs that we don't even know how to prepare you for those jobs, other than to give you the skills that you need to learn. Because learning is not something that you finish when your school is over. Learning is a lifelong process for all of us. In my professional career, I have had to learn. There weren't even cell phones when I started teaching. And now there's just amazing technology. And so I didn't have the luxury to say, I don't want to learn how to do that. I have had to do that. And I know that as I go forward, I will continue to have to do that. And that is your world. That's the world that you live in. So the challenging courses are there. They're available. Students have to be willing to take them. We have plenty of teachers willing to take students into those classes and help them learn how to learn and really prepare those academic skills and intellectual dispositions that you need to succeed in college.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I like that. So the next question goes to Mayor Bob Huber. So your question is, since we need to get into college, there's obviously the application process, and many of us might not know what exactly to put on our application to attract the colleges or to get notice. So do you have any advice on what is attractive to colleges or what would get us noticed?
Okay, I'll take that question. Thank you.
No problem.
I do have the benefit, even though I'm the mayor of a city right now, my history is, and I've been the mayor for 4 years. The 6 years prior to that, I was elected Ventura County community college trustee, and I represented this area. There's 5 of us across the county. And we ran the 3 colleges, Moore Park College, Oxnard College, and Ventura College. In the last 2 years, I was chair of the College Board of Trustees. So I have a fair amount of knowledge, at least going back 4 years ago, and I think this is a general enough question where I can give some thoughts in terms of getting into college. And there's different routes that people take. Some people aspire to go to an Ivy League college or whatever. And, you know, if your family has a lot of money and you don't get a scholarship, you're okay, but that's a very expensive process. Most people start at the community college level. And Simi also was a college trustee, and he'll talk about that as well. So I'm going to focus a little bit. Dr. Mantooth is the superintendent for the whole education in the county, so I'll let him take the hardball question on this if it comes to him. But from my standpoint, and she talked about the application, okay? How do you get recognized in the application to get into college, all right? First of all, as I see it, you want to do volunteerism, youth council or other things, because these are the kind of things that get the attention. You want to, whether you get involved in politics in your school or in athletics or whatever. And by the way, for those that are so inclined with athletics, you can get a scholarship to go through college. I had a full scholarship when I went to college, an athletic scholarship, and I wasn't an athlete. I was the manager of the football and track team. And so I had a full ride, and that was a good thing. So there are all kinds of ways. But on your application, you want to show that you've done volunteerism, whether it be the youth council. We have a lot of things, and we also have the youth employment service here in our city, where they'll help you fill out applications and do those things. And if you have work experience, that's going to show your initiative and your go-getter type. All these things add up to get into college. And one of the things that you want to do is you want to start early and kind of focus on what you want to do and where you want to plan it on out. I decided at age 13 what I wanted to do. And so I planned it out from there. And it's kind of nerdy, I know, but I did, okay? And I planned it out. I did it that way. And I wanted to be a funeral director, okay? So I went to University Pacific, and I got my 4-year degree because I wanted to have my own mortuary someday. I have a 4-year degree in business administration, and I left there, and then I went over to San Francisco College of Mortuary Science, and I got a degree in mortuary science, and then I went into the field, okay? So your age is immaterial. If you make your decision up when you're younger and you plan it that way, you have more control over your future. Now, a lot of people get into college and don't even pick a major because they haven't even thought about what they want to do. But I did, and it paid benefits for me. So my sense of it is get as involved as you can. Study hard. That's a key thing to getting into college. Study hard, apply yourself, and do outside activities. And I think that'll really help you get into the college of your choice.
Nice advice. My next question goes to Assemblyman Scott Wilk. So once we get into college and we already figured out what we're doing and we already got our degrees or anything, we're worried about getting a job. So is there any advice? Do you know any programs where they give out jobs or they help graduates find jobs? Or do you have any advice on how new graduates can get jobs?
Well, I think while you're in college, you want to do internships. Mm-hmm. And you want to do internships for a number of reasons. One, you want to do it to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And then also you want to acquire, real work experience. And hopefully some of that will put you ahead of other people when you're competing for jobs. I know it's really frustrating right now, talking to young people because, historically we've been, the most vibrant, economy in the country, and we currently have the sixth highest unemployment level, and because of the amount of regulation and taxation, we're just not producing the number of jobs. Coupled with that we're going through globalization, which affects all of us, and with the IT revolution, it's put some immense pressure on creating jobs. The fact of the matter is, if it was 15 years ago, and you had your choice between a B student in Boston or a genius in Bangalore, India, you take the B student in Boston because of the opportunities afforded you. That's no longer the case. I mean, the world has shrunk. because of technology, and which is why it's incumbent upon us to equip you with critical thinking skills and everything else you need to be able to compete, because you are now competing person against person globally. And so it's a challenge. I mean, what I look forward to do in my role as a state legislator is try to create an environment where people are willing to invest capital to start jobs. So that's why fair taxation, fair regulation, and I'm interested in workers' comp reform and legal reform. So there's a stable environment so people will create. I'm not going to name the company, but last year I was down in Silicon Valley, and I was with the COO of a company with major market cap, and talking with her, and we asked her, so what's the biggest challenge to your company? And without missing a beat, she said the California legislature, because we're not doing enough to help them. So they got 4,300 employees in Mountain View, which is in Silicon Valley, and she said we're not going to leave Mountain View, because with what we pay, we get the best and the brightest from Stanford and from Berkeley. But we have a second campus, which is in Austin, Texas, and they have 1,100 employees there and growing. And she says, I'm not putting another job in California until you guys change the way you do business. So I think I know what the pathway is. Unfortunately, my view's in the minority up in Sacramento. But right now, if we don't change our ways, I'm concerned about job opportunities for you all here in California.
Okay. So my next question goes to you, Superintendent Stanley Mantooth. So the main issue that students are really worried about is the cost of college. In fact, what I stated earlier was 68% of students said it was their main worry for the future. So do you know any ways that would make college more affordable, whether it be scholarships or anything else?
I'll take a stab at that. Actually, I'd like to recap some of the numbers that you thoughtfully threw out. The total amount of student debt in this country exceeds $1 trillion. The average amount of debt that a student graduates with is $35,000. And the average time period to pay that off is 9 years. So what can you do to help offset that? A lot of it is the choice of your college itself. Do you need Stanford or Harvard? Or is there a better college that's more affordable that actually is in alignment with your goals that has even stronger programs? But the other thing, there are actually three things that I would emphasize. One is not only you but your parents, start saving early. If you don't know what a 529 plan is, they should have known a few years back. Do your research on financial aid. And most importantly, do your research on scholarships. Right here in Ventura County, we have the Ventura County Community Foundation each year giving out $1.2 million to students like yourselves in a variety of disciplines. And all it takes is a little digging. And I know you're all proficient now on surfing the web, so you can do that pretty easily. And there are a lot of opportunities out there, not just to save, but to actually access other revenue or to offset the cost. And then the last thing is, when you get there, don't spend heavily. Keep saving while you're there and watch the credit card expenses. Because a large part of that $35,000 I referred to is debt that's attached to a credit card or other personal loan outside of the government loan program.
Thank you so much for your input. I'm guessing that answered all of your guys' questions. So next we're going to move on to the social media correspondence and see the views that you, the students, have on this issue of college.
On Poll Everywhere, there has been many questions about how are students going to be taught on how to afford college.
Which person is that?
Answer it.
It's probably how are students going to be taught to afford college? We'll pass that one. You're most.
I think I took a pretty good stab at answering that. You got to be very pragmatic. But just to drill a little bit deeper about schools, my daughter, for example, elected to go to community college her first 2 years, but then set her sights on Occidental College. That's $40,000 a year. Biggest raise I ever got when she graduated. There are schools with wonderful reputations in other areas of this country where you can have a great education for $10,000 a year including your room and board. It's a question of choice and what's going to be best for you. So there are ways of minimizing that burden when you get out. But if you do set your sights high, then I would suggest that you use those other criteria that I referenced to try to soften the financial burden.
Perfect. Next, we will be moving.
Well, I like to add on to
go?
that. Yeah, of course. So in terms of what we're doing in Sacramento, last year we passed the middle class scholarship. So this is a program that can be accessed by middle class families. If your family earns from $80,000 to $150,000, you can qualify in the aid slides according to your family's income. We had 73,000 students that took advantage of that for this upcoming academic year. I agree with the superintendent. The largest educational institution in the world is the California Community College System, 2.3 million students. It's actually and it's also the lowest cost college you can go to in the country. It's a wonderful place to go. Studies show that people who go to community college first and then transfer to UC do better academically than those that have been in the UC an entire 4 years. And again, looking at all options. Fact of the matter is, almost half of all jobs in the future, you're not going to need a bachelor's degree, but you're going to need some kind of career tech training. And you can do that at the community college level. As the mayor shared, I just came off 6 years off the College of the Canyons Board of Trustees, and we had started a program, a medical technician program. And what was interesting about that, for every scientist, they need 11 lab techs. So that's what this program did. It was a 2-year program, and when you graduate, you don't even have an AA, you just have your certificate. But our first class, they graduated, there were 16 of them. They all walked out with jobs paying $60,000 or higher. 2 of those people had already had a bachelor's, they had a BA in biology from UC Santa Barbara, but couldn't get jobs because they had the theoretical, but they didn't have the practical skills. So you do not have to go to Harvard or Princeton to thrive. You just have to figure out what your passion is and then get equipped to pursue it.
Thank you. Do we have anything else from social media?
Yes, we actually do have one from Twitter. It's our question is that we've heard the SAT is going to be changed by 2017. So we wanted to know what exactly is going to be changed.
No idea.
One of you would
If
know
we
that.
told you, we'd have to kill you. The fact is, and I'm sorry if that was a little politically incorrect,
That's a good one.
but the fact of the matter is
Made the point.
the test developers don't share that information with us. But I will point out something about the SAT that I think is really interesting, and it's really a positive, but that sounds like a negative at first blush. And that is scores have dropped. They haven't dropped a lot, but they have. And people are very concerned about the brain power of our students. The reason they've dropped is because so many more of you are taking the test. So many of you are aspiring to that challenge and wanting to do more and do better. So there's what's called an implementation dip. The same thing will happen with a new test and a new test format. Many of you have probably tested the new Smarter Balance test and will be taking that next year online. It's not so much about the content, but it's the adaptive nature of the test, and it will be getting used to the format. So change is good, and change is inevitable. It's one of our major constants.
Thank you. Anything else from social media?
There is one more. I'm sorry to take the time. But due to budget cuts, students are being pushed into higher level classes without preparation. We would like to know, what are we going to do to change this? Like, are we going to be able to have more preparation so we can be pushed into these classes, or what?
Are these all for me?
No, Deborah might be able to.
How about Ms. Salgado?
I don't support the first statement. Kids are not being pushed into upper level classes because of budget cuts. That's not what's happening. Kids are in rigorous courses in our schools. Our schools have to provide rigorous coursework for all of our students in order to prepare them for the technical training, for the college and careers that they're going to look to after. Anything less than that, we're doing you a disservice. So for a student to go into a class that they're unprepared for, that just means that they've got some work to do. And the teachers will support that, they will help that, and the schools will give the extra support that the students need in order to do well in those higher courses. What I like to say to students is that there is no class that we teach in any of our schools that any of you cannot master. If you're willing to work hard, you're as smart as the person next to you. Maybe you haven't had all the support that you needed up until this point, but if you are motivated, you can tackle it. There are teachers in your schools that will help you do that, and you are as capable as the next student. So pushing students into higher coursework, I think that's what we should be doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you to our social media correspondents. We'd just like to remind you all to continue texting and tweeting. But right now, we're going to transition to our second issue. So in a poll that we took among students from every school in Simi Valley, or at least middle schools and high schools, we found the top 3 challenges facing youth today. So we're going to discuss one of them next, which is the number 1, which was teen drug abuse. So teen drug abuse is by no means a new problem, but it's definitely a serious one. A change in attitude towards marijuana use has increased it in 12th graders from 19.4% in 2008 to 22.7% in 2013. Students which are sold, offered, or given drugs on campus is now at 22.1%. And we have to deal with this problem now because in another poll, it's been reported that 90% of Americans with substance abuse problems now started with smoking, drinking, or drugs in their adolescence. So my first question is to Assemblyman Wilk. What are you working on at the state level to combat youth drug abuse in California?
I can answer that, but honestly, I don't think the answer is at government. I think the answer, it comes down to the family. I grew up I had a sibling, and it was a wild ride, who abused alcohol and drugs. I mean, she's now been clean for 25 years, but it's just craziness. And every time we thought she hit rock bottom, she didn't. It just kept going further and further down. And she's somebody, she struggled academically and what have you, but it could happen to anybody. I've got another relative, straight A's, Eagle Scout, got accepted to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which you will find that's a difficult school to get into. He was accepted to engineering, which is a top 5 program in the country. Freshman year, started smoking pot, dropped out of school, and he's been smoking pot now for 3 years and is doing absolutely nothing with his life. So it's devastating. To me, parents have to be parents, have to engage with their kids, mentor their kids, role model for their kids. One of the things that studies show is that the family that eats together stays together and doesn't do drugs. The stats are interesting. If you don't eat dinner together 5 nights or less, you're twice as likely to have used tobacco, twice as likely to have used alcohol, and 1.5 times likelier to have tried marijuana. So to me, it comes down to the family core and keeping families together. In terms of the state level, I think we need to have more counselors in the schools. Statutorily, we're required to have a certain amount. We are not even close to meeting that. More investment in mental health, which we cut severely during the Great Recession. Something that you touched on that's going to be coming online in 2016, I believe, is legalizing marijuana. They may or may not try to do it well, we tried it this year to do it through the legislature. We'll see, but if the legislature doesn't pass it, I think there's proponents that are going to put it on the ballot, so it should be on the ballot November 2016. Just from my own life, I believe marijuana is a gateway drug, and I'm certainly not supportive of that, and I've got real concerns about that. They've now legalized it in the state of Washington as well as Colorado. I think the prudent thing to do would be let's wait and let's see what happens with those experiments before we inflict this on our population here in California.
Of course, thank you. So Superintendent Mantooth, what kind of programs are we working on in the schools to combat youth drug abuse?
Okay. One which you're probably all familiar with is what we call the DARE program. And if anybody's not familiar with the expression, just say no, please raise your hand. I'd like to talk to you afterwards. As Assembly Member Wilk mentioned, it's not just what we think of as dangerous drugs that are the problem. Fact is, I think nicotine is probably one of the hardest things to kick that a person can face. But we also have a growing epidemic of abuse of prescription drugs. So I think one way or another, you will have access to drugs either legally or illegally. So it's a question of your mindset. It's a question of your own courage and conviction to engage in positive behaviors. And one of the things we are doing in the schools is utilizing what we call PBIS systems, positive behavior intervention systems, programs like CHAMPS, which generate better self-esteem, a positive embracing of life, a better outlook, learning how to interact with one another, embrace one another, think for ourselves, not what our friends say. And just every once in a while, recognizing that our parents might just know something.
Thank you, Superintendent. My next question is for Mayor Huber. And I know you already mentioned the heroin task force, but at the city level, what are you working on to prevent youth drug abuse in our city?
Yeah, I said, when I answered the question before, I said elaborate more on that. Many of you may have seen the Dr. Phil show last year. And that didn't happen by accident. Dr. Phil contacted me about 4 months before the show aired. And he wanted us to be part of that show. And he said, because we have stepped up as a community and we're not hiding the problem. And this all started when 300 plus citizens came to City Hall, and a couple young people had died from drug overdose, okay? And so what happened is, from that, we formed the Heroin Prevention Task Force. And by the way, both of those young people died from heroin overdose. And so, and I want to thank the Assemblyman Wilk, because the state of California, and I assume he voted for this, passed a bill that went into effect earlier this year that if a person is ODing on heroin, the Good Samaritan won't be arrested that takes them in, and it's saving lives. And that came from the state, and I appreciate that, because we've been very active on these things in terms of making sure that we protect as best we can. The key thing on this is not getting involved in the abuse in the first place. And so what we're doing at the city level is we're reaching out and partnering with the schools. We have a heavy education program. We have it on our city's website, information about it. We have it on our television, public access, SCV TV. We have as I said, we've put drug prevention posters up at the bus stops. And by the way, the drug prevention posters were all designed by students from Santa Susana High School. Right now, we're partnering with the school district to have, through our police department, having guest speakers that are recovering addicts that can go into the students, and they're recovered now, and tell them, pardon my way of saying, the hell that they went through to get back into sobriety. We also we've beefed up our school resource officers, and with a request from the recommendation of the police department and the youth council, we now are on every campus. The canines come on randomly, okay, to look for drugs. And people are arrested on the spot, and you may have heard just this week, we arrested a student, okay, for having marijuana-laced lollipops. And so we're really tough on this. We also what we did about 3 years ago, we used to have a half-time officer we paid for with the Drug Enforcement Administration. We now have 2 full-time paid officers with the DEA, plus a 3rd officer with the county task force for all the cities, okay? And this is hurting our stats in terms of crime prevention, because we want to be considered one of the safest cities, but we're having a lot of arrests, because the word we put out, you come across our border and you bring drugs into our community, we're going to get you and you're going to prison. And you'll see all the time in the newspaper we're making these arrests. We're tough on this in our town, and we want the word to get out that we're doing this. There's a new 12-step meeting for young people. So if you're interested, this information is available on the city's website, simivalley.org/heroin prevention. And so there's a lot of information there. But the secret from our standpoint, when I was negotiating with Dr. Phil over that 4 months, I said, I don't want to be known as the heroin capital of the world. because we're not. We've stepped out. He says, well, we picked you because you're the leaders of the United States, and we'll make sure that people know that. And about a month after that, and so some people are saying, well, you know, it hurt people moving here or whatever. About a month after that, I was a speaker at an annual meeting of a real estate company, and there were 70 people there. And Dr. Phil had just aired. The biggest clap that I had was that we stepped out, and we're not hiding it like most cities. So we're heads on education and enforcement. That's what we're doing.
Thank you, Mayor Huber.
I'd like to add something
like
to
to add
that
something?
too. You know, the best deterrent to drugs is your attitude about yourself and your future. If you're excited about your future and you have possibilities that are running around in your mind and you're thinking about the things that you're going to do as an adult and that's exciting to you, that empowers you to avoid these other pitfalls. And our schools work very hard. Everything we do at a school is a drug deterrent. If you are busy doing your homework, if you have joined the marching band, if you are in an athletic team, all of those things will help you and empower you to stay away from the influences that will shorten your ability or limit your ability to do the things that you can get excited about as an adult. So.
That actually plays right into our next question, which is for you, Mrs. Salgado.
Oh.
What can students do to get involved and prevent drug abuse in our schools? So,
I love this question. You know, if you go to your school sites, there are a lot more of you than there are of adults on the campus. So as students decide that they want to have a drug-free campus, the adults on that campus will have a greater ability to make that happen for you. It's hard to convince a teenager that they need to report when they see things that are illegal, that are harmful on their campuses, but there's ways to do that. You can do it anonymously. You should be doing it. These are your campuses. This is where you live every day. You spend hours and hours of your time on your campuses. And everybody on that campus has to take responsibility for that. The adults will act on every piece of information that they get. They will investigate. They will do all that they can. We have a great partnership with the city, with the police department, and we will do all that we can to keep your schools drug-free. But you have to be part of that. You have to be part of that equation.
thank you. So we're going to go see what our audience is saying right now. Social media correspondent over there.
All right, so before we start our questions, we would like to point out that on Twitter, we are ranked number 7 in hashtags trending US nationally.
That's good, we should clap for that.
Let's get it up, up.
Well, she's looking that up. Can I say something?
Of course.
You'll appreciate this as a fun fact. The University of Vermont did a study last year of 400 population areas in the United States and over 10 million tweets, and we were named the 8th happiest city in the United States of America.
I think we should clap for that. That's a good one.
Speaking their talk, tweets.
So let's see what.
How do drug abuse and bullying relate in schools, in our schools? How do they relate to each other?
Or do they relate to each other?
Yeah, do they relate to each other? And you guys see how they relate if they go hand in hand?
Is there a correlation between drug abuse and bullying?
Well, I think that at the core of both of those is self-esteem, how you feel about yourself. If you feel self-confident and good about yourself, and then you're less likely to go after other people, either on social media or on your campuses. If you're not feeling good about yourself, that's when drug abuse can happen. That's when you can start lashing out at others and engaging in bullying activities. So I think they're very related, but I think the core of both of those is how you feel about yourself.
Thank you. Do we have another question?
What other methods are being used to reduce drug abuse?
I think we covered many of them, but is there any other one that any of you would like to talk about?
I'd just make one suggestion to all of you. If you haven't seen someone who's been addicted, seek that image out and ask yourself whether you would like to be in that picture. I think you'll have the answer pretty readily available.
Thank you.
I'd like to briefly comment.
Of course.
Probably many of you in here saw the Dr. Phil segment. And there was two young people that were featured on there, and it was clear that they were still using drugs. One of them was Stephen, and he regularly attends the Not One More meetings, and which is a part of our Heroin Task Force Committee, 2 members from Not One More. But he has totally turned his life around. He went to the drug rehab program that Dr. Phil sent him to, and he came out of that program totally clean and sober, and he now has 2 jobs. And so there is a way to do it, but you have to want to do it yourself, okay? You have to want to take that first step and stick with it.
Of course. Thank you, Mayor Huber. Do we have another question from the social media?
Yes, we do. So since earlier you mentioned about the drug problem at Simi High, we were wondering what you guys think we should do to prevent it from spreading to the other high schools.
That's an interesting question.
Where did that
Well-
rap come from?
It's everywhere.
First of all, it's not a drug problem at Simi High. Drugs don't come from the schools, they come into the schools. And it's a little naive to think that none of the other schools have similar problems. All high schools across the United States have similar problems. It's not unique to Simi High, it is not unique to any schools. And so all the things that we've discussed here, the things that we're doing to try to prevent things coming into the school, the drug dogs that come, the trying to get you excited about your school pride, being involved in your school, thinking about your future, all of those things are things that we do to prevent drugs from being tempting to you. Because if no one at the school wanted them, it wouldn't be there, right? And this is not a new problem. It's not a new situation. There were drugs in my high school. Back in the dark ages, yes, there were drugs on my campus as well. It's an ongoing problem that we have to try to guide our youth away from influences and substances that will hurt them.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes.
The thing, I was in late 2012. I was at 2011. It was here, and there was a drug prevention conference. And unfortunately, it was in this room. Unfortunately, it wasn't well attended, and I wish it had been. That's before it all started coming to light, okay? But what happened is that the person that came, the key speaker, was the head, he came from Washington, D.C., head of the Drug Enforcement Administration speaker's part. And he was a licensed pharmacologist and a licensed attorney. And what he said was that the problem today is much more intense, because what happens is young people go into the medicine cabinet and get OxyContin-type drugs, the opiates, okay? Or they'll go to a friend's house and say they want to go to the restroom, and they'll get in the medicine cabinet. And he says some of these are so powerful, you can get hooked on the first one. And then they start getting the pills various ways. And he said, and I'm quoting from the time frame, it may be different today. He said, so then at $80 a pill, you can only do it so much, okay? So then they go to heroin. And the heroin today, they can have support a heroin habit on $15 a day. And so that's how it happens, and it can happen just that quick. It can be a really good kid, and boy, they get hooked quick, and all of a sudden, there's a problem. So it's something that's a really serious thing, and of course, the key to the thing is you don't have to be a good sport when you're at a party and take a pill or whatever, because it can hit you just like that.
Thank you. So I think we have time for about one more question.
Yeah, we have one last one. Since extracurriculars help prevent drug abuse, what are ways that students can learn about extracurricular activities or get involved with other extracurricular activities?
You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Just real quickly, every high school has an associated student body on their campus, and that's kind of the center for all of the extracurricular activities. We have an activities director here, and there might be a few more here. Certainly go into the front office if you don't know where the ASB office is, and talk to your principal, talk to the counselors there, and they will guide you into all the extracurricular activities available at your schools.
And additionally, the Youth Council has opportunities for volunteerism. Also, I'm a Rotarian, and the Rotary clubs have what they call the Interact Club, and they're at most of the schools. And you get tremendous volunteerism opportunities there. And again, like I said earlier, that all can go on your application for college. Every bit of that helps you get into college.
Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our social media correspondents. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to kind of finish up here.
So today we had a very productive discussion, and we went into depth about college, which included student debt, and we went into drug abuse, which included how we're trying to prevent it within this community. I really hope it answered many of your questions. And to wrap up this discussion, do you all have any last words or thoughts that you would like to say to advise the youth?
May I go first?
No. Of course.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Ms. Salgado said about lifelong learning. It doesn't end, and I know it probably sounds like a Disney cruise commercial, but you have a sense of magic and wonder in your life, and there's no reason why it ever has to go away. And one of the ways that you preserve that, and one of the ways that you give back to being fortunate enough to live in the greatest country in the world, is by volunteerism and service learning. Do things for other people, get used to it, develop it as a habit, be an example for that. And as you become adults and you become more successful, you will guide that effort, you will guide the next generation to replicate the value of giving and caring for others. That's what our civilization and our social development must have as an integral component.
Sure, I'll join in. Anyway, I shared a lot with you today that may sound negative, but Jim Collins, who teaches at Stanford and is a business consultant and is a best-selling author, talks about how you need to confront the brutal facts. And so I shared some of those facts with you today. But despite that, I'm bullish on America and I'm bullish on California, and I believe you live in an incredible time. If you just go back to 2007, if somebody said app, you would think college application. If you said tweet, they think of a bird. G4, they think of a parking space. So with technology coming, your opportunities are limitless. You're going to be able to impact your community in this world in ways that we've never fathomed. I just encourage you to embrace that. And one of the ways you embrace that is lifelong learning. It never stops. And then 2, just remember, it's not about you. It's about others, and that'll make you a better person. That's going to positively impact your family, your neighborhood, your community, and ultimately the country and the world. So thank you for your time today.
Just want to say thank you for being here today. I was just reflecting. I was here Sunday evening when we had a very eminent speaker talking, Dr. Ben Carson. Maybe some of you have seen him on television. And he was talking about his history. His mother was a single mom. She came from a family with 24 children, and she worked 5 jobs. And what she did is she made sure that her children, every single week, read 2 books and gave her 2 book reports. And he's now, he's retired actually now, but he was one of the top neurosurgeons, brain surgeons in the world, okay? And it was an amazing to listen to him coming from abject poverty and the way he ended up being one of the top neurosurgeons. And when you talk about surgeons, brain surgery is one of the most difficult things there is to do in surgery. And the key to that, to me, and I read a lot when I was young, and Simi touched on it, and you're in such a wonderful age right now because the knowledge is so available. You want to know about something you can find out instantly. Never stop learning and never stop reading, because all the things we're talking about today come together because knowledge is power. That will make you powerful. Just study hard, read a lot, and you will be successful.
One of the things I'm really fond of saying, and I'm sincere when I say it, is if there's ever disaster, I hope I'm around teenagers, because you are the first ones to step up, you're the first ones to pitch in, you're the first ones to offer help. And I'm excited about the future of our country. I'm excited about the future that you will have, because even though we're handing you a lot of problems, you're up to it. You're up to the challenge. You are thoughtful, you're caring, and you're a wonderful generation. And I feel it a privilege every time I can associate myself with you in any way. So it's going to be good. The future's going to be good.
Thank you all so much for your input. And now we're going to go back to the social media correspondence to see an inspiring quote or statement from a student about this discussion.
The students have been tweeting and texting in saying that all the things that you guys have been saying have been super helpful with everything that they're dealing with right now, and they'd like to thank you just for talking and speaking about all of these things.
That's awesome. So I would like to thank you all for attending this. Without you guys, we obviously wouldn't have a youth town hall. You guys are the ones that run this. So thank you so much for participating and actually having interest in what's going on in our community. And can we give a huge round of applause for our amazing panelists?
Can I say something? One thing I'd like to say is a really, really deep thank you to the Simi Valley Unified School District for making this happen, because as I was driving here, I saw the buses being loaded at Royal High School. And we can't take for granted the schools made this happen too. So thank you for that.
So once again, thank you all. And at this time, I would like to invite Tony Penny to the stage.
Thanks. Thank you. I just want to, I think there's one group we forgot to thank and applaud, and I just wanted to make sure we got a chance to recognize our social media correspondents, our moderators, our master of ceremony. The Youth Council did an amazing job today. Thank you so much. So thank you all. I'm pure logistics at this point. We have a lunch reception that we're going to do with our panelists and our moderators and some invited guests from each of our schools. So if you are going to that lunch, we're going to ask that you kind of gather over in the lobby over there. We'll meet and we'll walk over. And then in just a minute, I'm going to ask everyone to remain seated for just a minute. Bree from our team is going to come up and dismiss each school. Some of you are heading back to school. Some of you are sticking around for a little bit. But thank you to our panel. Thank you to our moderators. And thank you to our wonderful audience. We hope you enjoyed our first Youth Town Hall here at the Reagan Library.